Hello. The guest today is Loren Busby. She's the director of the Weill Cornell BioVenture eLab, which creates so many wonderful startups from Weill Cornell. Hi, Lauren. What does the BioVenture eLab do?
BioVenture eLab works very closely with its colleagues at the Center for Technology Licensing at Weill Cornell Medicine, and we help to commercialize the technologies and inventions created by the Weill Cornell scientists and clinicians here. We also work very closely within our Tri-Eye ecosystem, and that includes Memorial Sloan Kettering as well as Rockefeller University and the hospitals in our Upper East Side area, including New York Presbyterian and Hospital for Special Surgery.
Very cool. So what are examples of like innovation that could come out that could help somebody's life get better?
Good question. So we create a number of inventions here on the Weill Cornell campus. The majority of them fall in the therapeutics category. So drugs that might help you to improve your life and lifestyle, the lives of patients, of course. We also invent very unique medical devices. In fact, you might not know, but the pap smear was invented here at Weill Cornell Medicine many, many years ago. So that's an example of what innovation comes out of our ecosystem. So in addition, we have digital health products that are created and diagnostics products, as well as tools that help to perform research, and we call them research tools.
Well, interesting. So it's all kinds of different kind of products.
Yes.
There's therapeutics, that's like a pill that you swallow.
Yes.
And then device, which is like a thing that you...
It can be a hard device, right, that you insert into the body or that's used during surgery to help improve the delivery of care. It can also be a digital health product, like a wearable that you use. So it can be a combination of a device plus some software that's included for patient monitoring or for biomarkers, for example, measuring biomarkers. We have a number of devices that are under development right now, including devices for assessing Alzheimer's disease, assessing migraine headaches, and things along those lines.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the patients, did they come to Weill Cornell, like they're sick or something, and they're able to use these innovations at Weill Cornell?
Well, you have a long road ahead of you from the point of actually developing a new technology to it being used in patient care.
Oh.
And so that timeline is different for therapeutics products versus medical device products, digital health, etc. In some cases, most cases, as it relates to innovations here on the Weill Cornell campus, those new drugs or devices or technologies have to go through regulatory approval. So part of what BioVenture eLab does is we inform and educate the community about those kinds of topics. What does it take to take an invention from the point of conception to the clinic? For therapeutics products, that can be anywhere from 10 to 20 years. Device products can be anywhere from 5 to 15 years. Digital health is a little bit of a shorter time frame, but depends on what that device is going to be doing, who's going to be using it. Is it going to be used by the provider or the patient? In what setting is it going to be deployed? So there are a lot of ideas and things as it relates to business model and how it's going to be commercialized, which need to be thought about. You need to strategize on them. Mm-hmm. You need to develop a commercialization strategy. That's what we do in terms of helping the scientists and clinicians who invent these products. We walk them through a number of topics to educate them about what it takes to go from concept to commercialization.
Gotcha. And then after it's commercialized, then it would help the patient.
Yes, correct. So once it's assuming it needs FDA approval, you go through FDA approval, and then you have to chart your course for how it's going to be delivered to whoever is going to be the end user, whether that end user is a provider, hospital, clinician, or whether it's going to be the patient directly. And that also takes time. Just because you have approval does not mean that it reaches patients' hands or the end user's hands right away. You have to have the capital to bring it out to the marketplace, and you have to have the right channels. We call that your go-to-market strategy. right? So you need to come up with a go-to-market strategy. And sometimes that is direct, meaning whoever invents the product and manufactures the product brings it direct to the end users.
Mhm.
But sometimes it's through other means, through partnerships or distributors who take the product after it's manufactured and actually bring it to the end user.
Oh, wow. So there's a lot of steps after you have like a big aha moment.
Yes.
You have to do so what's the process for getting started on creating something?
Okay, so when you're a student at Weill Cornell, and you can be on the medical school side or the graduate school side, that's how we differentiate. And those folks, they're very innovative and very eager to make an impact on patient care. And we love their energy and enthusiasm. But oftentimes their studies and the work that they have in the laboratory or having to, go through their medical training, it doesn't give them the opportunity to be as inventive as they may like. So more often than not, the inventions from Weill Cornell Medicine are usually conceived by the faculty member or the clinician in the conceptualization, depending upon on the research side, what they're doing at the bench and the whole theme of their laboratory and their work over the years. And as it relates to the clinician, more about how they can improve the delivery of care and the patient's care that they have for whatever their specialty may be or whatever their interest may be from the medical side.
Oh, interesting. So there's a researcher and there's a clinician.
But it very often they inform one another, right? So a researcher may be developing a cancer therapeutic, but the researcher needs to know on the clinical side how that provider, how that clinician is going to slot that particular therapeutic into the lines of therapy that are available. We call that standard of care. What is the standard of care today? And how can that new idea that you have at the bench on the research side be commercialized and used in the clinical setting, given what's already the standard of care? And so there's a lot of education that needs to take place between the research side and the clinical side.
Gotcha. And do they all happen in that building over there, the York Avenue building? Like the researcher and clinician are all in that same building?
No, all in that same building. Weill Cornell has a number of research facilities, and I think now over 500,000 square feet of laboratory space, but please don't quote me on that. And then from the clinical side, we have all of the work that's done in combination with our relationship through NYP, as well as other clinical services that are delivered here on the Upper East Side and our Midtown locations. We're going to have some clinical services available through our Midtown locations. And then, as you may know, New York Presbyterian has a number of locations around New York City, Lower Manhattan, for example, Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Weill Cornell clinicians participate there as well.
Gotcha. So I talked to a lot about software startups, and they all talk about product market fit. Is it like easier to find product market fit because you already have all the clinicians there with all the customers?
That's a very interesting question. We like to say that we are very good at founder market fit because we are in the healthcare area. We live and breathe life sciences every day. And so when a clinician or a researcher invents something, they have a passion for solving a problem that they are experiencing themselves. So we can understand, and it's easy to draw a linear line between what they actually encounter as a problem every day to a solution that they develop, either through the creation of a drug or through the creation of a device, digital health product, etc., to help solve that problem. And so, yes, we are very keen on that founder market fit that we are able to tout as one of the things we can do here. In terms of product market fit, I often tell people in our education courses, you can only test product market fit by getting outside the four walls of Weill Cornell Medicine, because that problem that you're trying to solve for that customer, conceived by you likely in this little microcosm, maybe not so little, but in this Upper East Side microcosm, may not be the same problem experienced by someone in a rural care setting, for example, or in a different part of the United States or even part of the world. So you need to get outside the four walls of Weill Cornell to test product market fit. And we, like many of the other institutions around New York City, we have programs that help people do that. The main program that you hear about often is the NSF I-Core Customer Discovery Program. And we work very closely with our brethren at Cornell University and use their Northeast I-Core Hub to steer our inventors through that program. We also do some programs here on the Weill campus where we sometimes may use outside resources to conduct the customer discovery or the customer research. And as you know, that may be either through primary research that you do directly with patients, or it may be secondary research that you do through research sources, market research firms that publish these massive market research reports, maybe through Wall Street, etc. And so we work with outside groups that help us do that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes.
Gotcha. So then that would establish product market fit.
Yes.
Do you have like a good specific example going from founder market fit to product market fit? Sure.
Yes, we have examples. So there's a company here in New York City called Visarius Therapeutics. And Visarius was founded by a clinician. He happens to be a clinician with a scientific research lab also. And his name is Dr. Jason Spector, and he is head of plastic surgery here at Weill Cornell. He had a problem with skin, and the when he had like burn victims or major surgery where large portions of the skin were removed, he was not satisfied with the aesthetic and other results that he experienced through using what was currently on the market. So he worked with researchers as well as some folks here in the ecosystem, and they developed a product called Dermosphere. That Dermosphere product received some government funding for the research that was conducted to develop it and test it in I think it was in animal studies. Yes, in animal studies first, and now they're doing human studies. He worked very closely with this young woman who was here in the ecosystem, and she is now the chief scientific officer there. Her name is Yulia Sapir-Lekovitzer, and she went through a number of programs here at BioVenture eLab, in a number of programs across our enterprise innovation group here. And then you see now an example of a founder, a clinician who had a problem. He tried to solve the problem by developing his own product called Dermosphere, and they formed a company called Visarius Therapeutics. And happily, Visarius just received FDA clearance about a year or so ago for this Dermosphere product.
So like, what's the steps in creating this new skin product? Do you have to publish papers?
Yes, you need a lot of research because you have to develop a method where the cells will grow and scaffold in a proper way. And not only grow, but of course, endure the test of time. So he worked closely with this group, and they developed a number of different techniques and products. I don't know all the ins and outs of how what their testing was like. I do know that it took them several years to develop the product that they first tested in pigs, I do believe.
Oh, wow.
And then they got FDA clearance, and now they're doing their human studies through a trial that you can find out more about online.
Oh, very interesting. So that was a good example of a clinician-led one where he solved the problem. Is there anything on the other end where they start off with a research solution where they come up with a new tool and they're trying to find this clinician?
Sure. Well, an example, especially for those who are in the New York City ecosystem, probably the highlight of that would be a company called Lexio Therapeutics that was founded by research conducted here by Dr. Ron Crystal. And Ron is the head of the Department of Genetic Medicine at Weill Cornell. He has a very long and storied career in gene therapy, and he developed a product that I believe was for Friedreich's ataxia and Alzheimer's disease gene therapy. And now those products were licensed to a company called Lexio Therapeutics. folks around New York City will know Lexeo Therapeutics because it's a darling in our ecosystem, very successful in terms of raising capital and moving products from what was originally licensed was I believe, one phase 1 clinical asset, as well as a number of preclinical assets. And the clinical and preclinical assets have now advanced to farther stages along the regulatory pathway. So the company has raised well over $300 million. They have a superb CEO. We're very happy for Dr. Crystal and all of the success that company has achieved.
Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. So I'm trying to picture from like the perspective of the researcher. They do a lot of the research, and then the clinician, they do a lot of the clinical. Like how much of their time is spent on the startup? Is this like in addition to the papers that they have to publish?
Good question too. So typically when you're an academic innovator, you're able to spend 1 day a week working on your startup idea or your invention. I should say not so much your invention, meaning that you're always creating. I mean, that's why you're in this world and in this ecosystem, because you have ideas and you want to execute on those ideas. How something works and trying to figure out how disease works, or trying to figure out a way to solve a problem related to that disease. So your ideas are very valuable. And once it is determined that you have some intellectual property that has commercial potential, then one pathway may be a startup. Another pathway, which is often used, is to license directly to an existing company, an industry, and forego the risk of the startup environment by going through a company that's currently operating. So that happens often. Our brethren at the Center for Technology Licensing will execute on those transactions. If it's moving down the pathway where it might be a startup, that's more where BioVenture eLab would get involved in terms of education and programming and making sure that we're trying to match resources up with that innovator to help them advance that project. And that may be from an education point of view, that may be introducing them to business folks who can help them, mentors who can help them and work with them. It may be introducing potential vendors or operating partners, maybe help with manufacturing, may help with development, may help with the regulatory strategy. And we have a lot of resources that we share with the community that allows, that helps them to move those projects along.
So the licensing would be a less time commitment. Deal with all that?
Yes. Well, depends on where it is in the process. Some people, even though there's a license arrangement, they may still have to add some advice or counsel to how that project is going to work or the product is going to be developed while it's in the hands of the commercial partner. And that might be through some type of consulting arrangement, for example. But still in those situations, the researcher or the clinician is allowed 1 day a week to work on those projects. And that's typical in academia.
1 day a week.
1 day a week, yeah.
That's fascinating. Is the idea to start the startup the rather than licensing so that it'll develop into a further along stage that would be easier to license? Is the idea to start to grow into an IPO company?
Well, everything takes money, unfortunately, Tony, as we learn as adults, right? And so the pathway that one might take for commercialization sometimes depends on where the money is going to come from. And that's not always part of, at one's whim. You can't just say, I want to license this product and I'm definitely going to go down that pathway. It's more about what the marketplace dictates. And so in some cases, especially for those opportunities that address a high unmet medical need, have a unique intellectual property position, are able to attract a good business team that want to take it forward, and you can see the project advancing down the road of a startup, there may be investors who want to take that and work with that particular group of people, those inventors, and move it and advance the project that way. In other cases, it may be a industry partner, and that industry partner may have a program or a area of science or a sector within the marketplace on which they are focusing. I'll give you an example. Obesity as an example. If someone has a number of programs in obesity, they've made some investments in that area, being a commercial company, and they want to expand that portfolio or amend that portfolio or adjust that portfolio, or maybe something's going off patent. Obesity is probably not the right area where it'd be going off patent, but you understand where I'm going. If they have that area of interest, then it's more likely it will go down the path of commercialization. So the marketplace, which we know is fickle, is really what dictates the direction.
That's so interesting. So this is all before FDA approval. So the marketplace isn't the patient that would benefit from it, but more the marketplace of like where the financial.
Yes, but a lot of it driven by unmet medical need. Okay, so it has to be a big market with a regulatory pathway that folks are familiar with, or they feel comfortable that they can assume those risks. They have to have the money to be able to execute on the clinical trials, which we know can be very arduous. And that's where we lose a lot of these inventions, right? Sometimes we lose them in the preclinical stage, but other times we lose them in the clinical stage. And that can be not only on the drug side, but also on the device side. And so, if you can withstand those risks and you have the experience set to take it through those processes, then it's more likely that it will reach the marketplace. And it sounds so simple, right? It sounds so linear. Yeah. It's never linear.
A lot of times the science could be good too. The science could be perfect, but then the marketplace might not.
That's correct. Yeah, the market, or you might be too early. You might, the marketplace might not be ready to adopt whatever your technology is. And an example of that is mRNA therapeutics. mRNA therapeutics, which is the COVID vaccine, was available prior to, 2019, 2020. That technology was under development. It just didn't find its niche, so to speak, until the market need was there. And they executed, superbly to bring those products to market. But I'm not sure that would have happened that fast without the catalyst of the same thing happens with gene therapy. Gene therapy was at one point a darling, and then unfortunately a patient did not make it through one of the trials that they were going through, and that put the program off for a good 10, 15 years. Wow. And then it came back and is now being implemented in a number of different disease areas. So you have these ebbs and flows of what is what the marketplace is willing to work with and take through all of these processes, which can be very arduous and long and difficult. And so you really have to have luck on your side a little bit.
And how do you get a feel for what the marketplace is out there? Do you go to the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference? What's the right way to get the feel for them?
Okay, so we talked a little bit earlier about customer discovery, but let's talk about customer discovery as it relates to understanding what's going on in industry. Okay. So you have to do industry research, and we're very fortunate to be in a city, New York City, which is the finance capital of the world, or close to it. And we have a lot of very smart folks on Wall Street who study these marketplaces for a living, and they publish materials about these marketplaces. And they analyze different segments of the marketplace and patient populations, and they share with the world what their findings are and what their opinions are about what's happening in science, what's happening in the life sciences sector, where they see both companies and products finding a niche in those different sectors. And so that's one way to educate yourself about what may be happening and opportunities that may be available. I won't say Wall Street is the only place. It is not the only place. It's just one place where you can access information. You can also access information by conducting surveys or doing focus groups or going to scientific conferences and learning about, what is being presented on the posters and what is the newest science and what's groundbreaking and what do the subject matter experts think is going to have legs in terms of making a difference with patients. So there's a lot of ways to gather information and understand the tenor of the environment.
How correlated is the academic world with the financial world? Is there like if it gets cited more, does that mean it gets more investors too?
Not very correlated. There's a timing difference between what happens in academia and what happens with Wall Street. So it's from a macro point of view, yes, I would say you get a feel at the academic level when there's a major shift in the finance world, but it doesn't happen immediately. So I wouldn't say that there's a strong beta connection.
So I'm trying to picture back to the researcher at the Weill Cornell. They're working on the research, and then the one day a week they can work on the innovation part of it.
Yeah.
Like, is there something they can do on those 4 days where they're working on the non-innovation part that could feed into that one day? Like, well, how to optimize the 4 days to make the best one day?
Yeah. Well, their body of work is probably all related. I would say that, it's not as clear cut as 4 days on one thing and one day on another. Mm-hmm. It's probably intertwined. I would also say that their reputation, they're building a reputation as a subject matter expert. And so for that researcher, the publications that they put forward, the conferences that they speak at, the number of students that they're working with in their laboratory, speaking engagements that they may have, not necessarily at conferences, but in other areas, be it with other scientists. That all feeds into a reputation. And the more you can build your reputation with within the community, your research community, then you will have your ideas. People will listen more closely to your ideas, and you may have a greater impact on the way that your research is thought of in that particular sector.
So that crosses over from the academic reputation, crosses over to the financial reputation.
Yes.
So that crosses over.
Yes. So if you are, a subject matter expert, you have 20 to 25 years of chain of evidence on various aspects of whatever your sector of interest is, then you are considered, a key opinion leader. And as a key opinion leader, people see your opinion for what's happening in their world, either with their patients or an innovation they may have, or even companies in industry may seek to work with you to develop new products, or may seek to have you work with them as they try to deploy products. So, for example, a medical device manufacturer may go to a surgeon and say, we just developed this great new widget. Let's say it's a bone replacement. Okay. I once worked with someone who had a total ankle product, and that ankle product had to be commercialized. How do you commercialize it? Well, you have to convince those orthopedic surgeons to use the product in patients. And how do you do that? Well, you have to develop a chain of evidence through clinical studies. And so they need physicians and surgeons to work with them on those clinical studies. You can develop your reputation that way. The industry loves when, you're open-minded in terms of trying new things. Of course, never putting the patient at risk, and always being disciplined in how you do that. So there are ways that people build their reputation, and then they are listened to more often in whatever their area of specialty is.
That's so interesting. So there's academic research that goes into clinician. There's also corporate research that goes into clinician.
Yes.
What's the difference between academic research and the R&D that happens at a corporate level?
Well, it depends. Some of the research in academia is deemed basic research. Okay. And then some of what happens in the corporate world is more translational, more on the what can be commercialized end, rather than finding new ideas, new ways that nature is surprising us in the way it works.
The skin example earlier, and also Lexios example, that was all from the basic research over.
Well, with the skin product, he had a problem doing the surgeries, right? So that was something that he discovered just in the course of care delivery. So in terms of basic research, not so much in that particular example, although to develop the product, I know that there was the person who did that had brought in some experience from prior industry. And so it wasn't like they took some components off the shelf put them together and then had a new product. That didn't happen. They invented a new product. That new invention is patented. That product went through numerous tests to prove its significance, and the fact that it improved patient care, at least in the animal studies that they did, it got FDA approval through a 510(k) process, and now they're doing human studies.
Gotcha. So the industry and the academic, it's not like that clear cut. Sometimes it comes back and forth.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Earlier you said there was like they do their research, and at some point there's some patent that could come out of it. Is there anything they can do to optimize their research for more patents, or is the idea to optimize research for research purposes, and if a patent comes out?
I don't know about optimizing for a patent, but if you are working on innovations in a particular field, you need to memorialize the work that you're doing and then look out into the marketplace and see if anyone else is doing work that's similar. And that work may be a method that is developed. It may be composition of matter that's developed. It may be a design in the case of a medical device. And all of those items are patentable if in fact they are novel and they are non-obvious, and it goes through a process where a patent attorney will review that in comparison to other items that they've seen, and it goes through a whole prosecution process.
How does that work into the workflow?
The folks in enterprise innovation, and particularly the Center for Technology Licensing, have various areas of research that they cover. And yes, they have regular interactions with those groups and departments. And those groups and departments are also trying to innovate, and they have their own goals that they want to meet. So in some cases, they come to us, or I should say to CTL. In other cases, CTL goes to them. But it's, the give and take symbiotic partnership.
Oh, very interesting. So earlier you said that there was like this marketplace where the money once is like their interest in obesity, for example. Is the researcher like very far removed from all that marketplace, or does the researcher keep attuned to what's happening in the marketplace?
It depends on
the research.
Depends on the person. Some folks, the clinicians, if they're working with patients, they have a good feel for what is standard of care, and so they know where the opportunities are. From the research side, I would say yes, more likely than not. If you have a body of knowledge that you've been working on, for example, in lung cancer, or if you have a body of knowledge in some other disease area. We have someone who was focused on multiple sclerosis, for example. So they may know what is the latest and greatest research in multiple sclerosis. But the researcher may not always be disease focused. They may be method focused, or they may be focused on certain mechanisms within the body. And those mechanisms may lead to various types of diseases. And so if they have ways of modifying those mechanisms, be it through exaggerating that mechanism or inhibiting that mechanism, they can work on that technology. That too becomes patentable. And because they can manipulate the mechanism that way, that would likely be a method. And then that turns into a potential process, which could be a product that is offered in the marketplace. So it's not always necessarily focused by disease.
It could be method as well.
Yeah.
It could be used for the head or the toe.
Right. But it's more about how they know how the body works. And so that may be their particular focus in their research. And we're going to be talking about a lot of this, and we're going to be highlighting several of our innovators at our upcoming BioInnovate Conference. So wow. I think I told you we're having a conference on April 23rd. It's a half a day from noon to 6 p.m. And the first half of that afternoon is set up specifically to introduce our innovators to people who might help them advance their projects. So to early stage investors, to industry representatives who might work in partnership or co-develop that particular product or method, and also potential business partners who can work with them and take these projects forward. So the first half is structured so that we can do meetings between innovators and some of these stakeholders in the industry. And then the second half of the afternoon is a group of panel discussions, featured guests, and presentations from some of our innovators. In fact, two of the innovators, one is focused on multiple sclerosis that I mentioned before. That's a therapeutic product. And the other is a digital assessment for amyloid plaque. And that is a precursor to understanding if someone has Alzheimer's disease or mild cognitive impairment. Wow. And so it's a new technology that they're bringing to the forefront.
And what are the attendees? Like, who should attend this?
We invite the entire ecosystem. Anyone from the New York City ecosystem is welcome. It's April 23rd, I mentioned, starts at noon, but the panel discussions start at 3 p.m. Mm-hmm. So it's open to the public at 3 p.m. And I can give you information about registering for the conference. We currently have close to 220 registrants. Wow. We have over 36 companies being represented. We have close to or more than 46 industry and investors who are represented. So we're going to be spending the next 2 weeks trying to match those folks up so that we can make magic happen between the innovators and some of the stakeholders who can help us advance these projects.
What's an example of a successful matching that happened in past years?
Well, we had some folks last year who were interested in working with Weill Cornell innovators. Two people who had been in the life sciences industry for many years, and they had invested in a company and were looking for a new project to take on. And they met a group of our innovators, and they've now are spinning out a company. So that's a successful venture. We had an investor who met one of the innovators a couple of years ago, and shortly after meeting him, spent about, 4 to 6 months, I don't remember exactly, doing due diligence, and then made a $5 million investment in that company. We've had relationships that develop. This is all about building relationships. So we've had relationships develop between innovators and investors that are long-term, and the investor is watching and hoping that, progress has been made over the course of the year. And they specifically use this conference to follow up with some of those inventors that they're tracking. So we've been successful in matching people with investors. Mm-hmm. We've been successful matching them with people who are interested from industry and spin out management teams. So along all those lines, we're going to be working very hard to make things happen.
That's wonderful. And this happens every year?
Every year. It's moved around a bit. Sometimes it was in February, but more recently it's been in April. So springtime in New York City, you can't beat it.
And in addition to this conference each year, there are other events and things you do to build up the entrepreneurship ecosystem.
Okay, good. So BioVenture eLab does a number of community events. We have some anchor programs throughout the year. For example, we run a student accelerator program. We run a faculty accelerator program. We have a number of grant writing people who come in and talk to our groups. We also do programs about various topics like women's health. We did a program recently about data valuation. We're going to be doing another program that's going to be highlighting our digital assets, particularly from our population health group, another women's health project. So there's a lot happening through BioVenture eLab and across the enterprise innovation groups here at Weill Cornell, a number of things that are here to educate people as well as sort of spur on the innovation and entrepreneurial culture.
And what's this wonderful space behind us?
Okay, so we are sitting in the classroom area that is part of BioVenture eLab. And every Tuesday night, at least in the spring, every Tuesday night we hold our faculty classes here. This year, 5 to 6:30. And so we get people together. We have people who come in as guest lecturers, some of them from industry, some of them from various service providers. And this area is used for education purposes. We also host some events here. We have a makerspace in the back with a brand new 3D printer. And we, about 3 or 4 times a year, we hold classes that are run by one of our MD students. And they teach somewhere between 25 and 40 students come and learn about 3D printing. So We do those kinds of programs. We do a number of online events. In fact, in the next 2 weeks, we have 2 warm-up events for our BioInnovate Conference. One is going to speak on the topic of novel targets and what it takes to actually move a project on a novel target from discovery through getting the attention of investors. And the second one is going to be on strategic networking and what is involved in, when you go to some of these conferences, how can you strategically use your time to make sure you're developing relationships that will be long lasting rather than episodic and not fulfilling? So that's going to be the topic there.
And this culture of ecosystem, this culture of entrepreneurship in this space, how do you make sure it permeates everywhere?
BioVenture eLab works very closely with all of the campuses across Cornell to keep that energy and enthusiasm alive with regard to innovation and entrepreneurship. So we do cross-campus collaborations with folks. We invite them to our programs. They invite us to their programs. We share as much as we can across our One Cornell ecosystem, meaning resources. We co-host events. We share our mentors and things. If there's someone in the Weill Cornell ecosystem that can help a life sciences researcher in the Ithaca ecosystem, we make those connections happen. And in fact, in some cases, there's a formal program for rewarding those cross-campus collaborations, and that's known as the Resnick Prize for Excellence in Entrepreneurship. And we are very grateful for the good fortune of Jean Resnick for endowing that award, and we're actually going to be giving away that award again this year at the BioInnovate Conference.
Super. And so for the closing question, with regards to all the work that you do here, what's the kindest thing that anyone's ever done for you?
Okay, I cannot do the work that we do here. We cannot do the work that we do here without the help of our mentors and other people in the ecosystem who donate their time. And some of them are Weill Cornell and Cornell alum who think, this is important work that they do. They come from all parts of the world, some from Rochester or, across the country, to participate and spend time with our innovators to try to help them advance their projects. So in terms of kindness, we don't pay them. They do it gratuitously and they do it with a smile, and they have been extraordinarily helpful to many of our innovators, and I thank them very much.